about in today's video is something that I'm going to refer to as the confusion principle. And I'm going to give a few points of reference in terms of how this confusion may have been improperly taught throughout the ages. So what I want to deal with in today's lecture is the principle of worship and this misled concept that somehow divine source energy seeks to be worshipped. And I know in terms of what is true unconditional love, that energy would never seek to be worshipped. The idea of worship comes from the ego-based ideology and thought processes, which again are not necessarily in opposition, but they are certainly in contrast to divine source and divine love. So a few things that I want to bring to the attention of the collective. Worship is not love. Worship and obedience, because worship basically negates this idea that we have to be in obedience of, or that which we are worshiping to is above us. Now, I don't disagree in terms of the vibration or the calibration of high level intelligence and divine love, that if we look in terms of a scale of understanding, from that vantage point, yes, there is this element of the intelligence being at a higher point in its calibration in terms of this sort of evolutionary scale. But just as we look at a baby, a toddler, an adolescent, we don't think we're above it. We just simply understand that in terms of its growth and learning, it's at a lower stage or a more beginner stage than where we're at in adulthood in terms of our consciousness. And this is where I want to segue into the confusion principle. To me, it's very, very self-evident that this idea of worship came from more so the Egyptian pharaohs, the Roman emperors, if we want to expand outward to really any human nation that elicits the idea of worship. It was the actual human beings that were at the top of the hierarchy scale within humanity that wanted this worship structure. And how this created a great amount of confusion in terms of the human consciousness is this misguided idea that the divine or source energy sought some sort of worship, which also led into misguided practices like sacrifice, okay? So this idea that we had to sacrifice blood or sacrifice an animal or sacrifice a human, depending on which culture we're looking for, because it would appease the gods. Everything I teach, I want to circle it back to the main principle of unconditional love. And the way, or the archetypal mind that we should always view this through is through the Divine Mother and the Divine Father principle. And a way that we can bring that understanding down to the earthly realm is through the understanding of how we love our children. So we can ask ourselves these very simple questions. If you were a father or you were a mother, would you require your child to worship you? Would you want your child to worship you? And if so, why? And would that be a misguided type of thinking if a mother or a father would want their child to worship them? And would that be in alignment with divine love? And the answer is a resounding no. Okay, no parent would ever seek worship from their child. And if they did, that parent would probably be a very messed up parent, okay? Somebody that was damaged in terms of their egoic inflation, and they would be projecting something that was confusion onto their child. So the role of a parent, the role of love, is to gently guide that child throughout its life, throughout its stages of learning. And sometimes that mother or that father will have certain lessons, will have some aspect of tough love, because this element of having expectations helps to prepare and create a container for that child to learn and grow through the principles of righteous ideologies and things that essentially expand life, expand love. Okay, if a parent is acting in divine accordance to the universal plan, that parent will be the ultimate loving guide. And there are divergences in that energy, in the sense that there are times when the parent will simply be a sounding board, will listen, will be there to hold space for the child. There is times when the parent will act as a teacher and show them, different ways of maneuvering in the world, how to utilize different tools. The parent becomes the teacher. There are times when the parent, knowing that the child may bring a different perspective, will sit back and listen, and the child also can become sort of like a teacher, and the parent will integrate whatever the information the child is bringing to them. And again, the intelligence of that construct of parent and child, through that mechanism of learning, both consciousnesses are augmented. And a parent that is truly operating from that highest sort of pinnacle of divine love will understand this. And again, the parent is also there to encourage, inspire, lift up, provide that hope and that passageway through this three-dimensional world in the highest form that that particular consciousness can elicit in the moment. And again, I have some notes here, so I'm stopping to look at what I had typed out. But whatever parent has ever said that essentially, to be worthy of my love, you have to worship me. Now, certainly there are parents out there that may have done so, but this would, and I think anybody would agree, that this would not be a good and healthy role of a parent, and would lead to a lot of distortion and mental pain for the child and for the parent as well, because it wouldn't be a truly divine exchange and a divine relationship in terms of what the parental principle of that divine love should be. Now, all divine love truly wants, in terms of practice and the principles of unconditional divine love. I made a few points here. So truly, this idea of source energy will only ever ask or only ever teach unconditional love, unity. So unity of all living creatures. That means unity of all human tribes, unity of all cultures, unity of all viewpoints, because in all viewpoints there is a thread of truth. And when we come from a place of understanding and a desire for authentic learning, there's always something to learn from the other. Okay, cooperation. That's the other thing that divine love will always teach. It will always teach and seek to bring about cooperation between all of the factions of life. Okay, we can see this as a principle throughout nature. We can see this in terms of the universe, how energies coexist to really essentially have this unraveling of the beautiful synergy that we call life. Okay, the next one on the list is kindness. So I know I talked a little bit about tough love, But kindness is the principle of always going back into that rooted energy of not creating imbalances and distortions in the other. Now, how do we do this? We do this through kind action. Anytime that we are in the suggestion of telling any other that they are not good enough, or they're not competent, or that they are of no value, that creates a trauma and a distortion within another. And those distortions lead to things like condemnation, hate, violence, all of those lower forms of thinking. So the next one on my list is guidance. So the divine paternal and maternal energies, source energy, will always act in a position of guidance, of loving guidance, meaning that they are gently nudging you towards your highest path. This idea of punishment, again, has been completely misrepresented throughout esoteric texts and historically. Punishment is truly something that the ego elicits onto all of the different life forms. Divine energy will never dole out punishment or wrath. It offers guidance. Guidance meaning go left because this is a better path. And in that guidance, divine energy will explain why going right may not be the best course of action. But in that true understanding of the principle of guidance, if the child decides to go right instead of left, even after understanding or hearing the lesson, that is a faction of complete unconditional love, because it allows the other the sacred space of free will. Now, in the system of free will, if any being decides to take a different fork in the road, then what divine guidance is trying to push it towards, that is a path of more resistance, and it will lead to certain lessons, certain karmic lessons. Now, again, I want to circle back to this idea that that is not a wrathful or a punishment. This is simply the divine intelligence saying, okay, if you want to take this path, that's fine, you can go, but it comes with hardship. And that allows, that is that principle of tough love that allows the child, and okay, I'm talking about the proverbial child, because we're all at different stages and we're certainly all children of the divine source at this moment. So if we choose that path that maybe is not in accordance with divine will, then we're going to have some tough lessons. And what happens often in human consciousness is that the human being, the ego self, will turn back and project onto divine guidance and onto the divine source energy and say, how come you allowed this to happen in my life? Why am I seeing this distortion and this pain and suffering? And truly, if we ask that voice inside ourselves, we probably knew all along that going in this alternate path would yield some tough lessons. And what the true divine intelligence is holding space for us to always return back to it, to always correct our vision. That is the vision of the path of light. That is the vision of the divine path. And the divine is always going to forevermore remain where it is, waiting for us. But we have to meet it halfway. And part of our journey is to understand how to bring our consciousness back to that point where we can then connect with that righteous, grateful, merciful energy. And that is the correction to some of the distorted teachings. Okay, so for my next point, passion is the energy, the fire within the self that is that spark within all life, all beings, all creatures, all living things on the planet. And that passion is the passion for creation itself. So true divine energy is always going to nudge us towards what it is inside of each and every one of us that creates passion. Now, how do we know we're on the right path towards what is that innate energy inside of us? It will bring us joy. The calibration of that energy is that joyful energy. We will feel our energy, our vibration start to be stimulated. We'll feel those really high vibrational energies. And from there, from that point, we will start to feel elevated or joyful. You know, this is a very good indicator that we are on that path back to meet the divine community. So when we are in community or in communion with the divine, we're also going to find that we have a peaceful, loving servitude to our community. And I want to offer a broader spectrum of view of community. So not just, you know, the highest principle of this is not just our particular culture, not just our particular political background, not just our particular species. True, divine, all-encompassing community means all of which is incarnate on planet Earth. So this means all plant life, all animal life, all of the cosmic energies, all of our human family, all ideologies. We can start to bridge them together into a semblance of that completeness, that wholeness of divine love. And the last two are hope, well, three: hope, protection, and guardianship. So hope is that hope and faith are actually really interlinked, and it is that energy that keeps us pushing through even when we are in a period of darkness or a period of suffering. And darkness is usually categorized as being lost, not knowing the path forward. And if we can walk in faith, we understand that the universal divine energies are always going to show up in mysterious, magical ways. And I know that, you know, maybe a lot of individuals don't like the term magical. So I'm just going to say, for, you know, for the sake of this video, mysterious ways that we do not fully comprehend. When we understand and we walk in faith and hope, we know that at the right timing for our highest good, everything in terms of the unfoldment of our current calibration will be out manifest for the highest principle of our learning. What this also means is that you can only learn the lessons where you are currently existing in terms of your own attunement to the collective, to the quantum energy, to the divine container that is our universe. And as you rise, then the lessons change. At those lower, more primal states, the lessons are a little bit more primal. They are a little bit more difficult, maybe you can say. But they grow in their refinement as we raise our frequency. Now, in terms of protection and guardianship, this is the role of the human species. The true divine role is to provide stewardship, guardianship, and protection to all life. This is what was meant when we said that we have dominion or domain over Earth. Now, it does not mean that we go around and sacrifice life and kill each other and kill animals and that we are violent in nature. That is distortion. That is something in terms of the formation of our thoughts that has become unbalanced. And in terms of creating that upward momentum towards awakening, towards meeting the divine in this state, we have to identify the problem, we have to be honest with the problem, and we have to understand that the distortion exists. Now, that doesn't mean that we move into the lower centers of self-loathing, guilt, fear, anger, distrust, and judgment of others. That's absolutely not the lesson here. The lesson here is simply to identify some of the principles of our lower thinking and then practice and pray and commune with what is that spark within us, and slowly and surely raise our consciousness and raise our vibration. Just like myself, when I was a young person eating hot dogs and, pulling the wings off of butterflies, I didn't understand. Not that I did this, in its entirety, but there were certainly times when I did not understand the gravity or the weight of my actions, because I physically did not conceive the principle of do unto others as you would have them do unto you. And certainly if you were a butterfly, you would not enjoy a little 4-year-old child pulling your wings off of your body. But it takes time for us to understand these lessons, and everything in life is part of that lesson. Earth is a school where we learn to attune the faculties of our mind, to raise our consciousness into divine mind. And so it's certainly not a bad place to be. It's just simply a place to learn our lessons. So I'm hoping that you enjoyed this video. I'm hoping that this lesson of the misguided principle of worship somehow is sinking in through my words. It's not that I am saying that we don't elevate divine thought, source energy, God, the universal container that birthed us and is us, that we don't elevate that to the highest point of thinking, and that we don't look to it as our shining star of where we want to head. But that, most fundamentally, we understand that we do not need to worship. We do not need to become less in front of love. Love is not asking for our obedience. Love is asking for us to understand it and become it. Love is not asking us to do things to show it that we love it. We don't have to kill anything. We don't have to attack other tribes. We don't have to hurt life. We don't have to offer up golden, cows or any kind of incense to the divine. The divine does not need this, okay? These are human forms of misguided thinking, distortion, which has led these principles to be taught incorrectly. And I think if we use the highest faculties of our intelligence, it becomes very evident. Love seeks to join with and elevate all others into love, and love in its highest point simply wants to grow and create more love. Love is expansion. Love is abundance. Love is joy. Love is purpose. Love is a container of protection. It is that eternal mother and father principle. Now, I will be making another video about the imbalance on Earth currently in the last several thousand years. The, again, distorted teaching that has only projected divine intelligence and divine will onto a masculine archetype. Now, this has created a huge amount of distortion on Earth. But again, I'm going to teach the principle as it originally calibrates to the energy of creation, so that we can understand it through the most balanced, loving guidance. All right, hopefully you have a good rest of your day. I've got to get to work myself, and we'll see you in the next video.